Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his warship looking out at the endless black of space through thick windows that could stop bullets. The human fleet had been traveling through the far edges of known space for 3 months now, checking on new human settlements and making sure the trade routes stayed safe. His ship was called the USS Retribution, and it was built like a floating fortress with enough weapons to level a small moon. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the life support systems that kept them all breathing in the cold vacuum of space. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his younger days when he had fought ground battles on distant worlds. He had been commanding ships for 20 years and had never lost a battle or left civilians to die when they's called for help. Communications officer Lisa Carter suddenly sat up straight at her control station. Her fingers moved quickly across the glowing displays in front of her as she worked to decode something that had just come through their receivers. Lisa was young and smart and had joined the fleet because she wanted to explore the galaxy and meet alien species. "Captain, we are getting a transmission on the emergency frequencies," Lisa said without taking her eyes off her screens. "It is not from any human ship or station." The entire bridge crew stopped what they were doing and looked toward Lisa. First Officer Danny Walsh walked over to her station to look at the data that was flowing across her monitors like digital rain. Danny was Morrison's second in command and had served with him for 8 years through dozens of dangerous missions. "Can you make it clear enough to understand?" Morrison asked as he moved closer to see what they had found. Lisa worked for several minutes using different computer programs to clean up the signal and make it stronger. The transmission was weak and kept breaking up, but slowly a voice began to come through the static noise. It was high-pitched and musical, but filled with fear and desperation that needed no translation to understand. "This is Research Vessel Harmony of the Celestial Republic," the alien voice said through the crackling interference. "We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Our defensive systems have completely failed, and we cannot escape. We have civilian researchers aboard, including our young ones who have never known war. Please, if anyone receives this message, we desperately need immediate assistance. Our location coordinates are being transmitted with this signal. We do not have much time left." The message repeated 3 more times before it faded back into the background noise of space. Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same expression on every face. The Celestial Republic was well known to humanity as a peaceful alliance of plant-eating alien species who spent their time studying science and exploring space without weapons or armies. They had always been friendly to humans and had shared their knowledge freely. "What do our sensors show in that area?" Morrison asked his sensor specialist. Ryan Torres bent over his instruments and studied the readings that were coming in from their long-range detectors. Ryan was an expert at reading the electronic signatures that ships gave off and could identify most known vessel types from thousands of miles away. "Sir, I am detecting multiple ship signatures near those coordinates," Ryan reported with concern in his voice. "At least 6 vessels, and their configuration does not match anything in our databases. They are much larger than our biggest ships." Morrison made his decision without hesitation. He had not become an admiral by waiting around when people needed help. He activated the communication system that connected him to all 47 ships in his battle group. His voice carried the authority of someone who had fought his way up from the lowest ranks. "All vessels, this is Admiral Morrison speaking," he announced to his entire fleet. "We have received a distress call from civilian researchers of the Celestial Republic who are under attack by unknown hostile forces. We will respond immediately to render assistance. All ships set course for grid reference Theta 79 at maximum speed. Battle stations for all crews. This is not a drill." Throughout the fleet, alarm bells began ringing as thousands of human sailors rushed to their combat positions. Gun crews loaded massive shells into railguns that could punch holes through asteroid armor. Engineers brought the fusion reactors up to full power, while shield generators hummed to life with enough energy to stop nuclear bombs. The human fleet turned as one toward the coordinates where alien civilians were fighting for their lives against unknown attackers. Morrison had built his reputation on never backing down from a fight and never leaving innocents to die when he had the power to save them. Earth had been a dangerous world that tried to kill humans every day for millions of years, and that had made them tough and mean when they needed to be. Estimated time to target location, Morrison asked his navigation officer. 17 minutes at current speed, sir, came the quick reply. Morrison nodded and settled into his command chair. He had fought pirates and raiders and hostile alien empires before, but this felt different somehow. The fear in that alien voice had been real and deep. Someone was attacking helpless researchers and their children, and that made Morrison angry in a way that few things could. Sir, we are getting more detailed sensor readings as we get closer, Ryan Torres reported from his station. The hostile ships are definitely not from any known friendly species. Their energy signatures suggest very advanced technology possibly. More advanced than our own. Morrison smiled grimly at that news. Humans had learned long ago that having better technology did not always mean winning fights. Earth had taught them to be creative and ruthless, and to never give up no matter how bad things looked. Every human ship was built to take punishment and keep fighting even when half destroyed. What about the Republic ship? Morrison asked. Still showing life signs, sir, but their power systems are failing, Ryan answered. It looks like they are being held in place by some kind of tractor beam system. The fleet continued racing through space toward the battle zone, while Morrison considered his options. He could try to negotiate with the attackers, but something told him that anyone willing to attack unarmed researchers would not be interested in talking. He could call for reinforcements, but that would take hours, and the Republic ship might not have hours left. All ships prepare for immediate combat. Upon arrival, Morrison announced to his fleet, "We do not know who these hostiles are or what they want, but they have made the mistake of attacking civilians under our protection. Load all weapons and prepare to show them why humans are called Deathworlders." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency as they prepared for battle. Lisa Carter monitored the alien distress signal, which was getting weaker as their power systems failed. Danny Walsh coordinated with the other ships in the fleet to plan their attack formation. Ryan Torres kept watch on the sensor screens for any surprises that might be waiting for them. Dot Morrison stood at the front of his bridge, looking out at the stars and thinking about the peaceful aliens who were probably terrified and wondering if help was coming. The Celestial Republic species were gentle beings who had evolved on safe worlds where the biggest danger was bad weather. They had no concept of the kind of violence that could exist in the galaxy. But humans understood violence very well because they had grown up with it on every level, from microscopic viruses to massive natural disasters. Earth had been trying to kill them since the first human learned to walk upright, and that had made them survivors who would fight against any odds to protect what they valued. 2 minutes to target zone, the navigation officer announced. Morrison activated his personal communicator to speak directly to the Marines, who would board any captured enemy ships. Assault teams be ready for immediate deployment. We may have prisoners to take and civilians to rescue. Remember, these Republic aliens are fragile compared to us, so be careful when handling them. The human fleet prepared to drop out of faster than light, traveled directly into a battle zone where unknown enemies were attacking helpless civilians. Morrison felt the familiar calm that always came over him before combat as he prepared to do what humans did best when good people were threatened by those who would harm them. Dropping to normal space in 5 seconds, the pilot announced. Morrison gripped the arms of his command chair as the stars shifted back to their normal patterns, and the fleet arrived at the coordinates where aliens were fighting for their lives against attackers who had picked the wrong target when they decided to threaten anyone under human protection. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of a star system that was dominated by a huge dying red star that cast everything in an eerie crimson light. The moment they arrived in normal space, every alarm on every ship began screaming, as their sensors detected the hostile situation ahead of them. Morrison felt his stomach tighten as he saw what they were facing on the main viewing screen. "Give me a full tactical report immediately," Morrison commanded as he leaned forward in his command chair. Chief Tactical Officer Ben Rodriguez studied his displays with the focused intensity of a man who had analyzed thousands of space battles. Ben was a short, stocky man with steady hands and eyes that missed nothing when it came to reading combat situations. He had served on warships for 15 years and could tell you the weak points of any known vessel design just by looking at it. 6 hostile vessels, sir, and their design is completely unknown to our databases," Ben reported in his calm professional voice. "They are significantly larger than our heavy cruiser-class ships. Each one appears to be at least twice the mass of our biggest vessels. The alien research ship is caught directly in the middle of their formation, and it looks like they are using some kind of advanced tractor beam system to hold it in place." Morrison could see the situation clearly now through the main viewer. The Celestial Republic ship was a beautiful thing that looked more like a living organism than a machine. It had flowing curves and what appeared to be gardens growing along its outer hull. The ship was completely motionless in space, while 6 dark angular vessels surrounded it like wolves circling a wounded deer. The hostile ships were ugly things that looked like they had been designed by someone who enjoyed causing pain. They were all sharp edges and weapon ports, with hulls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each ship bristled with gun turrets and missile launchers that were all pointed toward the helpless research vessel. "The hostile ships have detected our arrival," Lisa Carter announced from her communications station. "They are powering up their weapons systems and turning to face us." Morrison studied the tactical display that showed the positions of all the ships in the system. The enemy had superior numbers and bigger ships, but Morrison had not lived this long by being intimidated by bad odds. Every human vessel in his fleet had been built by engineers who understood that space was trying to kill you every second of every day and had designed their ships accordingly. "Send a message to the hostile fleet on all standard frequencies," Morrison ordered with ice in his voice. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force. You are currently attacking civilian researchers who are under our protection. You will withdraw from this system immediately or face the full consequences of your actions against innocents." The response came not in words, but in the form of bright energy beams that lanced out from the enemy ships toward the human fleet. Morrison watched with satisfaction as the alien weapons struck their forward shields and splashed harmlessly against the defensive barriers that protected his ships. The enemy weapons were impressive to look at, but they seemed to be designed more for show than for actual damage. "I guess that answers our question about their intentions," Morrison said with a cold smile. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Weapons are free, and you are authorized to engage all hostile targets. Let us show these bullies what happens when they threaten people under the protection of Deathworld warriors." The space around the dying red star suddenly erupted into a storm of weapons fire as 2 completely different ideas about warfare crashed into each other. The human ships opened up with everything they had, while the alien attackers tried to respond with their exotic energy weapons. Commander Amy Foster was the captain of the destroyer USS Vengeance, and she had been waiting for this moment since the fleet had first received the distress call. Amy was a small woman with fierce eyes who had grown up in the rough mining colonies where you learned to fight or you did not survive. She had worked her way up from enlisted sailor to ship captain through pure skill and determination. "Take. Use in fast and low," Amy ordered her pilot. "I want to get behind those two ships on the left flank before they know what hit them." The USS Vengeance was the smallest ship in the fleet, but it was also the fastest and most maneuverable. Amy used this to her advantage as she led her ship in a sweeping curve that brought her around behind the enemy formation, where their heavy weapons could not target her effectively. Captain Steve Parker commanded the heavy cruiser USS Defiance, and he coordinated with Amy to execute a pincer movement that caught two of the hostile ships between their combined firepower. Steve was a big man who had served in the Marine infantry before transferring to the Navy, and he understood the value of hitting hard and fast. "Target their weapon systems first," Morrison commanded over the fleet communication channel. "These might be pirates, but they are still living beings, and I want prisoners for questioning if possible." The human fleet demonstrated the precision gunnery that had made them famous throughout known space. Instead of simply trying to destroy the enemy ships, they systematically targeted specific systems to disable rather than kill. Kinetic rounds from railguns punched through armor, plating to wreck weapon turrets, while plasma bolts melted shield generators into useless scrap. The alien ships tried to fight back, but their weapons seemed designed for intimidating weaker opponents, rather than actual combat against determined enemies. Their energy beams were flashy and impressive, but they lacked the raw destructive power needed to penetrate military-grade defensive systems. Ben Rodriguez watched his tactical displays as the battle unfolded according to human doctrine. "Sir, the enemy ships are losing weapons and shield capacity rapidly. Their return fire is becoming less effective by the minute." Morrison nodded with grim satisfaction as he watched his fleet methodically dismantle the attacking force. The enemy had made the classic mistake of assuming that bigger ships automatically meant victory, but they had never faced opponents who had learned warfare on a planet that tried to kill everything living on it. "Sir, two of the hostile vessels are attempting to flee the battle zone," Ryan Torres reported from his sensor station. "Negative," Morrison replied immediately. "Target their engine systems and disable them. No one attacks civilians and then runs away when the fight turns against them." Long-range railgun fire from the human heavy cruisers reached out across thousands of miles to surgically destroy the fleeing ship's propulsion systems. The enemy vessels found themselves dead in space with no weapons and no way to escape the consequences of their actions. Within 20 minutes of the battle beginning, all 6 hostile ships were floating helpless in space, with their weapons destroyed and their engines disabled. Their crews were broadcasting surrender signals on every frequency they could access while the human fleet maintained firing positions around them. "Cease fire all ships," Morrison ordered when it became clear that the enemy had no fight left in them. "Damage report from all vessels." The reports came in quickly from throughout the fleet. The human ships had taken minimal damage from the alien weapons. Some scorched armor plating here and there, and a few overloaded shield generators, but nothing that would prevent them from continuing their mission. "Lisa," Carter suddenly looked up from her communication station with alarm on her face. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from the research vessel. Their life support systems are failing rapidly, and they report multiple injured crew members aboard." Morrison immediately shifted his focus from the defeated enemy to the people they had come here to save. The battle was won, but the rescue mission was just beginning, and time was running out for the aliens who had called for help. "Medical teams to the shuttle bays immediately," Morrison commanded over the ship-wide communication system. "Emergency. Engineering crews prepare for damage control operations on an alien vessel. I want that research ship stabilized and their people safe within the next hour." As human rescue teams raced toward their shuttles to help the damaged alien vessel, Morrison reflected on the strange nature of their situation. Humanity had earned its reputation as a warrior species through centuries of conflict and survival. But their first major rescue operation in this part of space was saving a ship full of peaceful scientists from attackers who had underestimated what it meant to threaten anyone under the protection of warriors from a death world. The first human shuttle to reach the damaged alien research vessel was piloted by Lieutenant Karen Mills, who had 20 years of experience flying in dangerous situations. Karen was a steady pilot who never panicked even when flying through asteroid fields or enemy fire, and she guided her shuttle carefully through the debris field that surrounded the Republic ship. Dr. Kevin Nash sat in the passenger compartment of the shuttle, along with his medical team and emergency repair specialists. Kevin was the chief medical officer for the entire fleet and had spent years studying alien biology so he could treat wounded beings from different species. He carried medical supplies that could work on most known alien physiologies and had saved hundreds of lives during his career. The docking port on their ship does not match our standard design, Karen reported over the communication system. I am going to have to use the emergency airlock connection system. Kevin nodded as he checked his medical equipment. One more time. The emergency connection system would create a pressurized tube between the two ships, but it would be a rough ride getting through it. He had treated aliens before, but never in an emergency situation like this one. The shuttle connected to the alien ship with a metallic clang that echoed through both vessels. Kevin led his team through the connecting tube and immediately noticed that the air on the alien ship smelled like flowers and growing plants. The gravity was lighter than what humans were used to, and the corridor walls were covered with what appeared to be living vines that glowed softly in the dim light. "This way, please," came a musical voice from ahead of them. A tall, slender alien appeared in the corridor, moving carefully because of obvious injuries to one of its legs. The being had pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly and large dark eyes that showed intelligence and gratitude. Kevin stepped forward and bowed slightly, which was the traditional greeting he had learned for Republic species. "I am Dr. Kevin Nash of the Human Defense Force Medical Corps. We received your distress call and came as quickly as we could." The alien returned the bow despite its injuries. "I am Scholar Prime Vera of the research vessel Harmony. We are deeply grateful for your assistance. Our medical bay is this way, but I must warn you that some of our people are badly hurt." Kevin followed Vera through corridors that looked more like garden paths than ship passageways. Plants grew from every available surface, providing both beauty and fresh air for the ship. The design was completely different from human vessels, which were built for efficiency and survival rather than comfort. The medical bay was a large room, filled with soft lighting and the sound of running water from small fountains built into the walls. Injured aliens lay on beds that appeared to be made from some kind of living material that adjusted itself to each patient. Kevin had never seen anything like it, but he could immediately tell that several of the aliens needed urgent medical attention. "How many injured do you have?" Kevin asked as he began setting up his portable medical equipment. 12 of our crew members were hurt when the attackers used some kind of sonic weapon against our ship," Vera explained. 3 are badly injured, and the rest have lesser wounds. We also have 5 younglings aboard who are frightened, but not physically harmed. Kevin began working immediately on the most seriously injured alien. The being was unconscious and had what appeared to be internal bleeding based on the blue fluid that was leaking from its mouth. Kevin had studied Republic physiology and knew that their circulatory system was similar enough to human systems that his medical techniques should work. "I need you to translate for me," Kevin told Vera as he began treating the injured alien. "I am going to give this patient a medication that will help stop the internal bleeding, but I need to know if your species has any allergic reactions to synthetic blood clotting agents." Vera spoke rapidly in her own language to the other aliens. In the medical bay, and then turned back to Kevin. Our medical officer says that should be safe. We have used similar treatments before when working with other species. Kevin injected the medication and watched as the alien's vital signs began to stabilize on his portable monitors. The bleeding slowed and then stopped completely while the patient's breathing became more regular. Kevin smiled with relief as he moved on to the next injured alien. While Kevin worked on the medical cases, his engineering team was busy throughout the ship trying to repair the damaged systems. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez was Ben's younger brother, but he had chosen to work with machines instead of weapons. Tony was crawling through access tunnels that were barely large enough for a human, trying to reach the ship's main power distribution center. "The damage is worse than we thought," Tony reported over his communicator. "These sonic weapons did something strange to their electronic systems. It looks like the sound waves caused harmonic vibrations that cracked circuit boards and damaged delicate components." Tony had brought spare parts and tools, but the alien technology was so different from human designs that he had to improvise solutions. He found ways to bypass damaged circuits and jury-rigged temporary repairs that would keep the ship's life support systems working until they could reach a proper repair facility. Meanwhile, back on the USS Retribution, Admiral Morrison was conducting his own investigation by interrogating the captured pirates. The enemy crew members had been brought aboard human ships where they were being held in secure detention cells. Morrison sat across from the apparent leader of the attacking force. In a small interrogation room, the alien pirate was an ugly creature with gray, scaly skin and small red eyes that showed intelligence but no compassion. It wore what appeared to be military-style clothing with rank insignia that Morrison did not recognize. The being had refused to give its name, but seemed willing to talk about its organization. "You cannot stop what is coming," the pirate leader said through the automatic translation system. "The Hegemony Collective has marked this entire sector of space for acquisition. Your reputation as Deathworlders means nothing against our vast armadas that control dozens of star systems." Morrison leaned back in his chair and studied the alien with cold eyes. During his military career, he had dealt with many different types of enemies, but pirates who attacked civilians were at the bottom of his list of beings worthy of respect. "You just made two very serious mistakes," Morrison said in a quiet voice that somehow managed to sound more threatening than shouting. "First, you decided to attack innocent researchers who were doing nothing but studying science and trying to make the galaxy a better place. Second, you made the mistake of threatening human beings and the people we have sworn to protect." The pirate leader laughed, which sounded like grinding metal through the translator. "You have only 47 ships in your little fleet. The Collective commands thousands of vessels, and we have conquered entire civilizations. What can a handful of Deathworlders do against such power?" Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in his expression. "In human culture, we have an old saying: the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. The problem with your plan is that we are not good people. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years, and that made us very good at killing things that threaten what we care about. And we never do nothing when innocent people are in danger." The pirate's confident expression began to change as Morrison continued speaking. "You see, we learned something important during our history. Evil beings like you count on good people, being too civilized or too scared to fight back. But humans are not civilized when it comes to protecting innocence, and we are definitely not scared of bullies who pick on researchers and children." Morrison stood up slowly and looked down at the CAPTURED pirate. "You wanted to find out what Deathworlders are capable of when someone threatens people under our protection. Congratulations. You are about to get a very educational experience back on the alien research vessel." Dr. Nash had finished treating all the injured crew members and was now meeting with the young aliens that Vera had called younglings. They were obviously the equivalent of teenagers in human terms, and they looked at the human medical team with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Are you really from the Deathworld that all the stories talk about?" one of the young aliens asked through the translator. Kevin smiled gently as he packed up his medical equipment. "We are from a planet called Earth. I suppose some people might call it a Deathworld, but to us it is just home. We learned to be strong there so we could help people like you when they need it." The young alien's eyes grew even larger. "Will you really protect us from the bad people who attacked our ship?" Kevin looked at the young being and thought about his own children back on Earth. "Yes, we will protect you. That is what humans do. We protect people who cannot protect themselves. And we make sure that bullies learn not to hurt innocent beings. You are safe now." 3 days after the rescue operation, Admiral Morrison found himself in a situation he had never expected when he first joined the military. He was sitting in what the Republic aliens called a harmony circle, which was their way of making important decisions as a group. A meeting was taking place in the main conference room of the research vessel, Harmony, which had been repaired enough to function properly again. Scholar Prime Vera sat across from Morrison, along with the other senior researchers. From her ship, the aliens had insisted on this formal meeting to thank the humans and to discuss something that they said was very important for the future safety of their people. Morrison had agreed to the meeting, even though he found alien customs confusing. "Sometimes, Admiral Morrison, we have received communications from our government on the homeworld," Vera began in her musical voice. "The news of your rescue operation has spread throughout Republic space and beyond. Our leaders are both grateful and deeply concerned about what we have learned from your interrogation of the captured pirates." Morrison nodded as he listened to the translation coming through his earpiece. He had shared the information from the pirate interrogations with the Republic government because they had a right to know about the threats facing their people. The Hegemony Collective was apparently much larger and more dangerous than anyone had realized. "Our intelligence services have been investigating the claims made by the pirate leader," Vera continued. "What we have discovered is very troubling. The Hegemony Collective has been systematically attacking civilian vessels throughout this entire region of space for the past 2 years. They target ships from peaceful species who have no military forces to defend themselves." One of the other alien researchers spoke up through the translator. "The major military powers in this part of the galaxy have been ignoring these attacks. They claim that protecting civilian vessels is not their responsibility and that each species must defend itself." Morrison felt anger building in his chest as he listened to this information. The idea that military forces would ignore attacks on innocent civilians went against everything he had been taught about duty and honor. Human military doctrine was very clear that protecting non-combatants was one of the most important responsibilities of any armed force. "How many ships have been attacked?" Morrison asked. Vera consulted a datapad that contained information gathered by Republic intelligence agents. "In the past 2 years, at least 47 civilian vessels have been attacked by hegemony forces. 23 of those ships were completely destroyed with all hands lost. The others were captured and their crews sold into slavery on worlds controlled by the Collective." Morrison stood up and walked to the large viewing window that showed the stars outside. He could see several of his warships maintaining protective positions around the Republic vessel. The numbers that Vera had given him represented hundreds or possibly thousands of innocent beings who had died or been enslaved while the major powers did nothing to help them. "What does your government want from us?" Morrison asked without turning around. "The Republic Senate has voted to formally request human assistance in establishing patrol routes through our space," Vera replied. "We are willing to provide fuel and supplies for your ships in exchange for protection of our civilian vessels. We know that humans value trade agreements, So we are also prepared to share our scientific discoveries and provide access to rare materials that your people need. Morrison turned back to face the aliens. He could see hope in their large eyes, but also fear that he might refuse their request. The decision was not really his to make, since it would require approval from human military command, but he knew what his recommendation would be. I will need to communicate with my superiors about any formal agreements, Morrison said. But I can tell you that as long as my fleet is in this region of space, we will respond to any distress calls from civilian vessels, regardless of what species they belong. T.O. That is what humans do. The relief on the aliens' faces was obvious even across species barriers. Vera bowed deeply in the traditional Republic manner of showing respect and gratitude. Your people truly are as honorable as the stories claim. We will never forget that humans came to help us when no one else would. After the meeting ended, Morrison returned to his own ship to begin the process of communicating with human military headquarters about the situation they had discovered. He knew that his superiors would be interested in both the strategic implications of the hegemony threat and the potential benefits of an alliance with the Republic. While Morrison worked on his official reports, Dr. Nash was conducting his own investigation into something that had been bothering him since the rescue operation. He had noticed that several of the alien researchers seemed to be suffering from malnutrition, despite having adequate food supplies on their ship. The problem is that we have been unable to stop at safe ports for resupply, one of the alien medical officers explained through the translator. The attacks on civilian vessels have made it too dangerous for research ships to travel the normal trade routes. We have been eating emergency rations for months. Nash realized that the pirate attacks were having effects that went far beyond the direct victims. Entire populations of peaceful aliens were being cut off from trade and communication because they were afraid to leave their home systems. The Hegemony Collective was essentially holding hostage every civilian vessel in the region through fear and intimidation. We can share our food supplies with you, Nash offered. Human rations are designed to be nutritious for most alien species, and we have plenty for extended missions. The alien medical officer looked grateful, but also embarrassed. We cannot accept charity without offering something in return. That would violate our cultural principles about fair exchange. Nash thought for a moment and then smiled. What if we call it a medical consultation fee? I would very much like to learn more about your advanced biotechnology and how your living ship systems work. That knowledge would be valuable to human medical research. This solution satisfied the aliens' cultural requirements while also helping Nash expand his knowledge of xenobiology. Over the next several hours, he learned about biological systems that could grow and repair themselves, while the aliens learned about human medical techniques that could be adapted for their use. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the USS Retribution, Lieutenant Commander Carl Wright was monitoring long-range communications when she detected something unusual. Carol was the ship's intelligence officer, and she had spent years learning to recognize patterns in electronic transmissions that might indicate hostile activity. Admiral, we are receiving multiple distress signals from different locations throughout this sector, Corral reported when Morrison returned to the bridge. At least 6 civilian vessels are reporting attacks by unknown hostiles in the past 12 hours. Morrison looked at the tactical display that showed the locations of the distress calls. They were spread across several star systems, which meant that the Hegemony Collective was conducting coordinated attacks across a wide area. The pirates were not just opportunistic raiders, but part of an organized military campaign against civilian targets. Do we have the resources to respond to multiple emergency situations simultaneously? Morrison asked his first officer. Danny Walsh studied the fleet status reports on his display. We could split the fleet into smaller groups to cover more area, but that would leave each group vulnerable if they encounter heavy resistance. The pirates know our strength now, and they might be setting traps. Morrison weighed his options carefully. Every minute of delay meant that innocent beings were suffering or dying, but rushing into multiple unknown situations could result in losing human ships and crews. The decision was made more difficult by the fact that they were operating far from any human bases or reinforcements. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet," Morrison ordered. "We are going to split into 3 groups to respond to the closest distress calls. Each group will have enough firepower to handle the enemy forces we encountered before, but they must be prepared for heavier resistance." The fleet began to separate into smaller formations, while Morrison considered the larger implications of what they were facing. The Hegemony Collective was not just a pirate organization, but a serious military threat that was systematically conquering civilian populations. If they were allowed to continue their operations unchecked, they would eventually control all the trade, routes, and communication networks in this part of space. Morrison activated his personal communication system to record a message for human military command. "This is Admiral Morrison, reporting on the situation in Sector 7. We have encountered evidence of large-scale military operations against civilian populations by a hostile force calling itself the Hegemony Collective. I am recommending immediate deployment of additional fleet assets to counter this threat and protect allied civilian populations as the human fleet prepared to respond to multiple emergency situations." Morrison reflected on how quickly their simple patrol mission had turned into something much larger and more dangerous than anyone had expected. 2 weeks after the rescue of the Republic research vessel, Admiral Morrison stood in his ready room looking at reports that covered his entire desk. The papers contained information about successful rescue operations conducted by his split fleet, groups and communications from dozens of different alien species asking for human protection. What had started as a simple patrol mission had grown into something that would change the balance of power in this entire region of space. Commander Lisa Carter entered the room carrying another stack of messages that had arrived through the long-range communication system. Lisa had been working almost around the clock to handle all the incoming transmissions from alien governments and civilian organizations throughout the sector. "Admiral, we have received formal thanks from the Celestial Republic government along with 3 new trade agreements from merchant guilds who want to do business with human colonies," Lisa reported as she set the messages on his desk. "We have also received 17 additional distress calls from civilian ships reporting Hegemony Collective attacks in the past 24 hours. Morrison looked up from the tactical reports he had been studying. The numbers told a story that was both encouraging and deeply troubling at the same time. His fleet had successfully rescued 43 civilian vessels in the past 2 weeks without losing a single human ship or crew member. The pirates had quickly learned to avoid direct confrontation with human warships after word of their defeats had spread through criminal networks. "What is the current status of our 3 fleet groups?" Morrison asked. Lisa consulted her datapad, which contained real-time information from all the ships under Morrison's command. "Captain Foster's group has just completed the rescue of a merchant convoy that was trapped by pirates near the Theta Centauri system. Captain Parker's heavy cruisers are escorting a group of refugee ships to safety in Republic space. Commander, Wright's destroyers are investigating reports of hegemony forces building a base in an uninhabited system." Morrison nodded as he absorbed this information. His decision to split the fleet had proven successful in tactical terms, but it had also revealed the true scope of the problem they were facing. The Hegemony Collective was not just conducting random pirate raids, but was systematically working to control all civilian movement through space in this region. "Sir, there is something else you need to know," Lisa continued with concern in her voice. "Intelligence reports from Republic sources indicate that the Hegemony has been asking questions about human military capabilities. They are specifically trying to learn about our fleet strength and the location of human colonies." This news made Morrison lean back in his chair as he considered the implications. Up until now, the conflict had been limited to protecting alien civilians from pirate attacks, but it seemed like the hegemony was preparing to escalate the situation by directly threatening human interests. The communication system on Morrison's desk activated with an incoming message from the bridge. "Admiral, this is Commander Walsh. We are receiving a priority transmission from human military headquarters. Admiral Brooks wants to speak with you immediately." Morrison activated the long-range communication system that connected him to human space thousands of light years away. The image of Admiral Sarah Brooks appeared on his screen after several seconds of delay caused by the vast distance the signal had to travel. Brooks was Morrison's superior officer and the commander of all human military forces in this part of the galaxy. "Jake, I have been reading your reports about the situation in your patrol sector," Brooks began without preamble. "The information about organized attacks on civilian populations has caused quite a stir at headquarters. The civilian government is very concerned about the implications for human trade routes and colony security." Morrison straightened in his chair as he prepared to give his official assessment of the situation. "Admiral, the Hegemony Collective represents a serious threat not just to local alien populations, but to the stability of this entire region. They have the resources and organization to interfere with human shipping and possibly threaten our colonial settlements." Brooks nodded as she listened to Morrison's report. "That matches the intelligence assessments we have received from other sources. The decision has been made to reinforce your position with additional fleet assets. You will be receiving 30 more ships, including 2 heavy battle cruisers, within the next month." Morrison felt both relief and concern at this news. More ships would give him the ability to better protect civilian populations and counter hegemony operations, but it also meant that the conflict was likely to escalate beyond simple rescue missions. "What are my new orders regarding the protection of alien civilian vessels?" Morrison asked. "You are authorized to establish formal patrol routes through Allied space and to take whatever action you deem necessary to protect civilian populations from pirate attacks," Brooks replied. "The political leadership has decided that human interests are best served by maintaining stability in this region and preventing the hegemony from controlling trade routes." After the communication ended, Morrison called a meeting of his senior staff to discuss the new developments. The conference room aboard the USS Retribution was filled with officers who had spent the past 2 weeks fighting pirates and rescuing civilians from across a dozen different species. "The situation has officially changed from a rescue operation to a peacekeeping mission," Morrison announced to his gathered officers. "We are going to be receiving significant reinforcements, and we have been authorized to establish a permanent human presence in this region." Commander Ben Rodriguez raised his hand to ask a question. "Sir, what about the other major military powers in this area? Are they going to object to human ships patrolling what they consider their sphere of influence?" Morrison had been wondering about this issue himself. The major alien military forces had been ignoring attacks on civilians, but they might not be happy about humans moving in to fill the security vacuum they had created. According to intelligence reports, the other powers are more concerned about the hegemony threat than they are about human expansion, Morrison replied. "Several governments have privately indicated that they would welcome human assistance in dealing with the pirate problem." Dr. Nash spoke up from his position at the conference table. "Admiral, I think there is something else we need to consider. The civilian populations we have been rescuing are starting to see humans as their protectors. Word is spreading through peaceful species that human ships will respond to distress calls when no one else will." Morrison realized that Nash was right about the psychological impact of their rescue operations. The human fleet had gained something that could not be bought or built, which was the trust and gratitude of civilian populations throughout the region. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission," Lisa announced from her position at the communications console. This one is different from the usual distress calls. It appears to be from a coalition of civilian governments. The main viewing screen activated to show a group of aliens from several different species sitting around what appeared to be a diplomatic conference table. Morrison recognized some of the beings as representatives from species they had rescued in recent weeks. Admiral Morrison, this is Speaker Prime Chun of the Civilian Protection Alliance, the lead alien announced through the translation system. We represent 47 different peaceful species whose ships and colonies have been threatened by hegemony attacks. We have formed this alliance to coordinate our response to this crisis. Morrison listened with interest as the alien spokesperson continued. We have voted to formally request that human military forces establish permanent patrol bases in our territory. In exchange, we are prepared to provide logistical support, intelligence information, and exclusive trading rights with our peoples. This was exactly the kind of development that Morrison had hoped might happen, but had not dared to expect so quickly. The alien civilians were essentially asking humans to become their protectors in exchange for political and economic benefits that would strengthen human influence throughout the region. We accept your proposal in principle, Morrison replied, after consulting with his staff through silent hand signals. However, any formal agreements will need to be negotiated between your alliance and the human civilian government. What I can promise you is that as long as human military forces are present in this region, we will continue to respond to attacks on civilian populations. The aliens showed obvious relief at this response, and the spokesperson bowed in the traditional manner of showing respect. Your people have proven that the stories about human honor and courage are true. We will never forget that when evil threatened the innocent, it was the Deathworlders who came to help when no one else would. As the transmission ended, Morrison looked around at his officers and saw the same expression on every face. They had started this mission as a simple patrol operation, but had ended up becoming the protectors of an entire region of space. The responsibility was enormous, but Morrison knew that his people were ready for the challenge because protecting innocence was what humans did best when the galaxy needed heroes.